Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Grumman Pilot's YouTube channel. And this is Hangar Flying, episode 19, September 25th, 2021. And we apologize for the skimpy last episode. It fell on the day after John Maestre had passed away 21 years ago. But anyway, we're moving forward on the Project Tiger, so we've got a lot of stuff to update you on. So sit down, stay tuned for some fun. Here we come. So we would like to ask you please subscribe, hit the like button, and hit the notify to stay current with our content. So as you've been watching the progress on the Project Tiger, you've noticed that we've cleaned down the entire firewall, and this morning we were able to change out the relays on the firewall with new ones, and then we also were able to change out the electric fuel pump with a new one. That still leaves us the voltage regulator on the firewall that we have to do. So we'll be doing that in a later video, but just for now we're just getting everything put in there, and we'll be talking about the relays, and we'll be talking about the voltage regulator, and we'll be talking about the electric fuel pump, as well as the battery bracket has now gone back on the firewall. That's for the battery box. That's all ready to go. We have new cables coming for all of that. We have the old hoses coming off and the start of putting on the new pressure hoses. We are going to change out the voltage regulator from the one that originally came on the 79, which is basically a Ford voltage regulator, and we're going to be going ahead and putting a plain power one on. And that'll take care of the firewall with all of that. So stay tuned for that. And we have two relays here, the Lamars, with all the problems with the Skytex and the problems that they're having. We're back to using Lamar relays again, which just to kind of go through the history of our line, when the airplanes first came out, they had Bendix relays. Then they were White Rogers relays. Then they were Lamar, and now Skytech is the new big thing, but Skytech's having production problems. Now that it's been taken over by Hartzell, even though it's really not Hartzell's fault, the bad parts came in the last batch that Les Staples and his group put together. But here are the new solenoids. So we have, for the master relay, we have the continuous duty 100 amp Lamar, and it's the X61-0028. This and this one are both available from a number of places. Aircraft Spruce is one. And then for the starter relay, which is intermittent duty but also heavy duty, is the X61-0030 relay. So let me take them out of the box. They look just like the regular relays. There are a few extra little tabs on these. That is the intermittent. And this is the continuous. Now, on both of these, there's 4 posts. And so the way they're wired is on the master, which is this one, the positive battery cable goes here. This goes up to the starter. There's a jumper that goes from here to here to provide 12 volts. You notice these little isolation pads? That's because the relay is isolated from the case. This is where your line goes back to the master switch to energize it. So this is the continuous. The starter is very similar. Starter comes in here. There is a 12-volt jumper between these two posts. Your starter button grounds this post, and then that runs to the starter line. So these are available. Replacing the 38-year-old relays. They were still working, but starting to be a bit problematic. There was a 2-volt drop across the starter relay, which even with a Skytech starter makes it spin kind of slow. So we'll be going back in with the new relays, one from Fletcher and the new Lamar. This has got the jumper on it. We'll be adding the diode, come off the old one. And it's fairly simple to remove. You just simply take the AM310 bolts out of each of them. The fun job is inside, laying on the floor behind the rudder pedals on the 79, fighting the parking brake and everything. And while we're here, we're going to clean the firewall all nice and pretty. Well, I pretty well wiped that down, but we're going to Scotch-Brite it and clean it really well. Check all the connections, put the new relays in, and we'll have some video for you after they're in place. But for the most part, it's a simple matter of swap them out, put the bridge bar in place, check your insulators, and call it a day. Since our airplanes first came out, originally with Bendix, and then White Rogers were filling the bill, Then they became problematic. Then we had the Lamars, and then the most recent one, Skytech. So let's just talk a little bit on this Lamar. You'll notice it has 4 posts, and it's a little different wiring, but basically you have where your 12 volt comes in from the battery. This side goes out to the starter relay above usually, and then you have your diode between the 12 volt and this post, and this is the control line which grounds the relay from the master switch. And then finally, here's your 12 volt jumper, which provides power to the relay itself. It's an isolated relay. Very nice. It's 100 amps continuous, 12 volts. So that's how you wire up a Lamar master relay. I keep a diagram on the wall so I don't forget it. And we hope you have some happy flying. Let's talk electric fuel pumps on our airplane. The electric fuel pump on our aircraft is really used for takeoff, which we're in a climb attitude, because at that point the engine is above the level of the fuel in the wings, and therefore we need a little assistance to push the fuel uphill to the mechanical pump, which then pressurizes the carburetor. Fuel goes through into the cylinders, and we get a boom, and we continue to fly. Now, the original maker of these fuel pumps, you might want to notice, like, what kind of fuel pump do I have on my airplane? There's a lot you can get, and there is an automotive version that you can buy, and I want to talk about that for just a minute. There is a good supply of these fuel pumps. Fletch Air does a real great job of supplying us with them, and we'll talk about that momentarily. But I had a customer with a 160 horsepower engine in his AA1B. He brings it to me and he goes, I've got a problem. Every time I'm in climb at high power, the engine misses a little bit, not much, but as soon as I hit cruise, descent, every other pattern, every other regime of flight, it does fine. It's just another thing. So the first thing we look at is I go to the electric fuel pump. I'm going to pull the screen in the bottom. I want to see if there's any dirt. But the first thing I noticed was there's no drillable tab on the fuel pump. And then I look at the label, Facet Electric Fuel Pump. It's a 574 Alpha. 1973 Jeep. This came from the Air Napa store. So we ended up taking this off his airplane and replacing it with a new one from Fletch Air. Now let's talk about the pumps that Fletch Air sells. According to Garner, they'll order 100 of these from Aircraft Spruce, and these are listed in their catalog for experimental use only. He'll order 100 of these Facet pumps. He'll send them to an engineering lab where they are tested for both flow rate at a certain pressure, and there's a spec for this fuel pump in the type certificate. Those that meet the certification means they can deliver the right amount of pressure at the right fuel flow. Well, then they're inscribed with both the part number and an engineering log number showing what date, they go back in the log and show you it was tested by this lab on this date by what technician. Now, these do go bad, and these are bad pumps, but if you don't have a scribble on here, then you probably have an original, and you might want to think about getting a replacement in the future. Here's another one, all inscribed. It's funny too, because when I see a label like this, notice this must be through a properly fused circuit. It reminds me when I worked for the Naval Research Lab, we wanted to build a little 8-foot by 10-foot shed out back to put a lake for just turning metal parts. By the time they figured out all the signs that were required by OSHA, we had to build it 16 foot by 20 foot to be able to put all the signs on the wall for the single lathe. So again, here's the new one. It has all the engineering scribe numbers on it. So Fletch Air also puts their advertisement. So again, glad to see Fletch Air doing all the work to supply the fleet with the fuel pumps we so desperately need for our aircraft. Make sure you have the right one. If you're having a miss or something, first place I would suggest, if it's in a climb attitude, is let's check the electric fuel pump and make sure it's doing its job. Again, I'd like to thank you for watching our YouTube Grumman Pilots channel. These help support the Grumman Pilots Association, your GPA. Thank you very much.
So here's the new electric fuel pump on the firewall of the Project Tiger, and we're going to swing the camera around here in just a minute, but there is an engineering number on the firewall. And I'd like to thank Dave Hall for helping Shop Monkey this morning while I was on my way to the airport to get the relays and the fuel pump changed on the Project Tiger. It's a two-man job, and what's going to be nice about it is that Dave's going to get a discount on some hoses he's buying. He just doesn't know it yet. Now, here's the old motor mount that was on the firewall of the Project Tiger. And then so Matt removed it, and then he took the battery box components and he cleaned them all, and he polished up the air box, and we inspected the air box because the Tiger banjos are hard to come by. But anyway, we also took the aux power port off of the bottom of the battery box tray and cleaned up all the terminals, both in the connectors and on the backside. Cleaned up all the bolts, did the corrosion off, got new hardware and all for the reassembly. And then the bracket itself, Matt took and bead blasted it down, and then we shot it with some primer in a nice gray, a slate gray color, and then we did all the battery box parts in white. So that's all been repainted, and believe it or not, by now it's all back together again. But here it is, as Matt was rebuilding and putting it all back together with the new cables that are on the bottom for the aux power port, and checking all the hardware that is on the aux power port and the battery cable. As you can see, it's all been put together with new hardware, and it looks pretty from the standpoint of the bracket and the rods for the battery box and the shield and all around that. And we're going to be working on cleaning up the shield and rebuilding the shield. That'll be coming along. But sometimes it takes 4 hands to do the clocking, because you want to get those cables in there, and once you get them all tight and everything, that's not going to be a problem, because they're going to be on the airplane for 40-something years and just working flawlessly. But it may take a little bit of time to get them all in there. And again, you may need a second pair of hands in there to make sure everything is held just perfectly in place as you're going about it.
For the urinary tract, but she was telling him how little I actually eat a day. Like the other day, for dinner, I had a half a cup of chili.
Right.
With a couple of crackers in it.
Did he give you grief, or he was like...
No, I'm not gaining weight. I'm not losing weight. So obviously...
All that matters.
Right.
Now, while Shop Monkey's finished putting together the aux power port, here's a look at the old cables that had come off the aircraft. And believe it or not, they're in really good shape, all the heat shrink tubing on them. But there's the new Teflon cable with all the new heat shrink and the connectors on it that we're going to be installing on the aircraft. And I believe that one is 43 inches long, so that would be the starter one that goes from the starter relay. But here's Matt putting the aux power ports cables on the aux power port. So now we've reached the point where we need 4 hands to get all the cable clocked. The first cable is easy. It's the second cable, because of the interference, and you have a very limited room, and you're going to want that second set of hands. So I'm happy to assist Shop Monkey today with this. And again, it's all going back together with all new clean hardware and new star washers, as well as the pressure washers. And we're putting new boots on it too, to protect it from the weather while it's in the engine compartment. But again, not a hard job to do. Just take your time. The new hardware is not really all that expensive, but again, you may need to have somebody help you to get it all in place, and then you'll spend a lot of time with the wrenches to get it down and clocked. And right when the star starts to bite in, that's when you want to make sure you're at the exact perfect place you want to be, and you may have to make some adjustments. You may have to do it, replace a star, but they're not really tricky, and I've never really had one be problematic. It's just a matter of sometimes you need to get in there with a small screwdriver to be able to move around the boot, to get the boot to go on, because those boots are easy to tear, and you don't want to be doing that. So anyway, we'll get back to watching Shop Monkey finish tightening up this aux power port with the second cable. And now the battery box bracket is being put back through the firewall. And again, this is a two-person job. You've got to get somebody holding it all in place on the outside, and then somebody gets the fun job of climbing into the cockpit and dealing with the rudder pedals. Now, it is greatly accelerated by the fact that if you have a battery-operated quarter-inch ratchet and a long extension and the right hardware, let me tell you, you can easily tighten those bolts up from the inside and let power do it, or you can do it by hand if you don't have a power tool. But again, not a hard job. Just take your time, and here I am holding it in place while Shop Monkey's on the inside getting ready to tighten.
Top outboard. Top inboard. Alrighty. Hang on, I just wanted to get all the cables all made up
before I swap them out.
And there's the new battery box assembly, all painted with new hardware and the aux power port on the bottom. The new cables all in loom, all the other wires in looming. We're looming everything in the engine compartment, so it looks pretty nice. Now, before it went on, we wanted to take one of the electrical cables and get them on the relays. Well, one of the new cables on the relays looks so good, we decided to put the other one on the starter relay and get that all in the proper place, get them all tightened down, get the boots on them. That's one less thing that we'll have to work around. And then when the battery box tray goes back in that you've already seen that we've done, we won't have to worry about trying to fight around it to go ahead and do this operation right here. And let me just interject right here very quickly that it was so nice to go to the hangar day with nice weather and have all of us working on the Project Tiger. So nice to see these new parts going on. Well, we also had some new lifetime hose set made up for the Project Tiger, and it's nice. We took the old ones off today, and we're putting the blue pressure hoses on right now on the firewall to get them out of the way. But again, it's so nice to see these new parts finally going on the airplane, and the pile of parts that we have in front of the Project Tiger getting smaller as we're putting them all on the aircraft. So nice to see. Now the windshield is removed as a unit, and what we're doing right here is we're taking the double bead seal and those brackets off of the windshield, but we're going to be removing the windshield from the bow brackets that are on either side of the fuselage, both left and right behind your interior, and we're going to be taking out the glare shield and removing the 3 bolts up in the front that hold it through the coaming to hold it all together so we can take it out as a unit, because the plan is that after we do all the stuff with the interior and in the firewall that we have to do right now to get it ready to go to the avionics shop, it's nice to have the windshield out, and we'll be putting it back in for the flight. But anyway, stay tuned and watch us go ahead and get it pulled out.
Shop monkey smiling, and that is how it comes out. You don't mind if you shatter the old windshields. I mean, I knew a guy that used to take the windshields out with a hammer, just shatter them and pull them apart. But kind of hard on the rest of the airplane.
So here's the Project Tiger windshield out of the Project Tiger now, sitting on a table on the side, and got a couple of things underneath it. But anyway, we're going to take a good long look at it. You know, we've just got it out of the way right now, sitting over on the side. But you can see on the left-hand side how it's already starting to debow there, and we're not going to re-worry about that because we're going to go ahead and put it back in with all hardware to hold it in place. And then we took an old windshield, and we've had a combing protector that we made out of an old windshield, and it's installed in the airplane so you don't actually walk up and bend it because it's all nice and in pretty condition. So we just thought you might want to take a look at all of that. And if that's a tip, you can use that for an old windshield, or you can use it on your cellar window to keep the snow out from in the wheel well. But anyway, that protects the aircraft, and that combing is very hard because if you ever bend it, you'll never get it straight again. Don't ask me how I know that, but it's a good tip, and a lot of shops do something like this with the old glass. You're going to keep it around. It's not hard to store, but it does help protect the airplane that it goes on. So, you know, we got it off on the side right here. Not going to be a problem. We're going to keep it nice and safe because it is going to go back in the airplane to get it ready to go to the avionics shop. So that's where we are on pulling the windshield out on the Project Tiger, and then we're probably going to have another shot right here of the bow. But you can see where it's all debonded, and we're looking at that. Not going to take the time to clean it and rebond it right now because it will be safe once we put all the hardware in place for the, we're not going to be flying at max speed either when we take it to the avionics shop. But anyway, take that time to care for things. That's why you see wing protectors, sheets on the wings and on the tail when you're working on it, so you don't want to scratch your paint and stuff like that. So ladies and gentlemen, we hope you found all this useful and informative. Thanks for watching, and have a great day flying your Grumman. You know, forget buying expensive toys for your kittens and cats. We find that just taking the aircraft spruce box and the paper on the tile floor is more than enough amusement for them for hours.